Persons exit the chamber. Chair would like to recognize the well-dressed senator from Northwest Georgia.
Mr. President, it's a beautiful day here. We appreciate your great leadership in this chamber. The man from Ocilla, Georgia, that peanut picker himself told me that today is National Peanut Butter Lovers Day. And of course, he would know all about that. The journal's been read and found to be correct.
Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. Any senators that have bills or resolutions to introduce, please bring them forward to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, will you read first reading and reference of Senate bills?
Senate Bill 222 by Senator Stone of the 23rd and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 17 of the OCGA relating to criminal procedures so as to create the Georgia Council on Criminal Justice Reform and provide
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 224 by Senator Harper the 7th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 16 of the OCGA relating to crimes and offenses so as to revise provisions for the carrying of weapons in judicial courts.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 226 by Senator Robertson of the 29th, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 4876.1 of the OCGA relating to use of safety belts in passenger vehicles so to provide that all occupants...
Public safety.
Senate Bill 227 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 4286 of the OCGA relating to special license plates promoting and supporting certain worthy agencies.
Rules.
Senate Bill 228 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others, a bill entitled Act to provide greater protections for individuals who have suffered from childhood sexual abuse.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 229 by Senator Robertson of the 29th, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 1 of Title 15 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding courts so as to create parental accountability.
Judiciary.
Senate Resolution 272 by Senator Jordan VI, a resolution urging Georgia Power to remove the unlined coal ash pile at the McDonough-Atkinson Power Plant and place the coal ash in a...
Natural resources.
Senate Resolution 275 by Senator Unterman of the 45th and others, a resolution creating the Joint Innovation and Emerging Technology Study Committee and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 276 by Senator Unterman of the 45th and others, a resolution urging Congress to eliminate the 5-month waiting period for disability insurance benefits for individuals living
Health and Human Services.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 31 by Reverend Ralston the 7th and others, a bill entitled an act to make and provide appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June.
Appropriations.
House Bill 64 by Reverend Prince of the 127th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7, Title 19 of the OCGA relating to parent and child relationship general provisions.
Judiciary.
House Bill 68 by Reverend Carson the 46th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 2A of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to student scholarship organizations so as to prohibit certain entities from being student scholarship.
Education.
House Bill 134 by Reverend Rich of the 97th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 15 of Title 36 of the OCGA relating to county law libraries so as to repeal a population provision regarding
Special Judiciary.
House Bill 197 by Representative Dempsey the 13th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Article 4 of Chapter 12 of Title 45 of the OCGA relating to the Office of Planning and Budget so as to provide for the establishment of the Strategic Integrated Data.
Science and Technology.
House Bill 277 by Reverend Carson the 46th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to allow goodwill from insurer acquisitions to be treated as an asset.
Insurance.
House Bill 321 by Reverend Lott of the 122nd and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Article 6C of Chapter 8 of Title 31 of the OCGA relating to the hospital Medicaid financing program so as to extend the sunset provision.
Finance.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees, please.
Mr. President, Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has had our consideration following the legislation structure where we stand back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 188 do pass, Senate Bill 192 do pass, Senate Bill 202 do pass by Senator Jones of the 25th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had our consideration following the legislation structure where we stand back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 95 do pass by substitute, Senate Bill 122 do pass by substitute, Senate Bill 144 do pass by substitute. This is my Senator Cowser to the 46th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Finance has had our consideration following legislation instructed we're sending back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 173 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 183 do pass. Senate Bill 216 do pass. Submitted by Senator Hufstedler, 52nd. Mr. President, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice that I will introduce a minority report to be read along with the majority report of Senate Bill 173, submitted by Senator Orrock of the 36th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General has had consideration following legislation structure. We're sending back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 171 to pass by substitute, Senate by Senator Kirk of the 13th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations had as a consideration the following legislation structure we're sent back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 141 to pass, House Bill 293 to pass, Senate by Senator Kirk of the 13th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Government Oversight has had a consideration of the following legislation structure we're sent back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 77 to pass by substitute, Senate Resolution 214 to pass by Senator Heath of the 31st. And Mr. President, Senate Committee on Higher Education has had a consideration of the following legislation structure we're sent back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 92 to pass by substitute, Senate Bill 161 to pass by substitute, Senate by Senator Tibbins of the 37th. That concludes the order.
Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 31 by Senator Redd of the 33rd and others, law enforcement officers and agencies performing any duty at the scene of an emergency. Law enforcement officers shall not be liable. Clarify. Senate Bill 60 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, Jeremy Nelson and Nick Blakely, Sudden Cardiac Arrest Prevention Act. Senate Bill 83 by Senator Mullins of the 53rd and others, Quality Basic Education, Elective Courses in History and Literature of the Old and New Testament Eras Provisions revised. Senate Bill 109 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, Advanced Practice Registered Nurse, Delegation by a Physician, Order Radiographic Imaging Tests in Non-Life-Threatening Situations authorized. Senate Bill 110 by Senator Stone of the 23rd and others, Court Statewide Business Court pursuant to the Constitution of the state established. Senate Bill 117 by Senator Black of the 8th and others, Public Retirement System Standards Law that does not require an individual to pay the full actuarial cost of obtaining such creditable service, prohibit passage of any law. Senate Bill 121 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, Prescription Drug Monitoring Program Database, length of time prescription information is retained from 2 years to 5 years, increase. Senate Bill 140 by Senator Harbison the 15th and others, World War I Centennial Commission sunset provisions extend. Senate Bill 168 by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others, Nurses certain definitions revised. Senate Bill 170 by Senator Thompson the 14th and others, States and other flags. Honor and remember flag as the state's emblem of the service, sacrifice of the members of the armed forces designate. Senate Bill 175 by Senator Black of the 8th and others, Teachers Retirement System of Georgia, certain public employers to make employer and employee contributions require. Senate Bill 176 by Senator Black of the 8th and others, Employees Retirement System of Georgia, certain public employers make employer and employee contribution on behalf of retired members require. Senate Bill 184 by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others, State Employees Health Insurance Plan, services covered and furnished by a federally qualified health center are reimbursed at no less than the Medicare maximum provide. Senate Bill 190 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, Child Custody Intrastate Jurisdiction Act, party may bring a counterclaim for contempt in response to a complaint seeking a charge of legal or physical custody to provide. Senate Bill 191 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, courts, law assistants as law clerks and staff attorneys rename. Senate Bill 195 by Senator Hustetler of 52nd and others, Prescription Drug Benefits Freedom of Information and Consumer Protection Act. Senate Bill 207 by Senator Burke of the 11th and others, Georgia Board for Physician Workforce, change name, board's membership revised. Senate Bill 208 by Senator Robertson the 29th and others, driver's licenses, implied consent notices revised. Senate Resolution 104 by Senator Cater-Shack of the 48th and others, United States Department of Veterans Affairs, establish new outpatient Veterans Affairs clinics, requests. Senate Resolution 237 by Senator Couster of the 46th and others, United States Congress call a convention limit on the number of terms that a person may be elected. United States House of Representatives requests. House Resolution 165 by Representative Green, the 151st and others. Property conveyance of certain state-owned real property authorized. House Resolution 182 by Representative Green, the 151st and others. Property granting of non-exclusive easements authorized. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
It's now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from 11th for business outside the chamber.
Without objection, the senator from the 11th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 23rd and the senator from the 24th for business inside the Capitol. Without
objection, the senators from the 23rd and the 24th are excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the gentleman from the 18th District for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 18th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 38th.
Without objection, the senator from the 38th is excused. Any additional motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st.
in extreme caution, I don't know if the senator from the 26th is going to get back from business inside the Capitol, so I ask that he be excused.
Without objection, the senator from the 26th is excused. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. It's now time for our morning devotional. It is now time for our morning devotional. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure the doors. I'd like to recognize our pro tem to lead us in our pledge today and to introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pledge allegiance. The United States of America. States of America. And to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to the Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. I think I was off a beat or two there. I beg your pardon. Mr. President said that happened before. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce the eldest son of a great friend of mine from Gainesville, and whose family has been a pillar of our community for many generations. Mr. Whit Martin is with us today, and Whit is originally from Gainesville, and he is with the Smyrna First United Methodist Church. He is a Master of Divinity from Asbury Theological Seminary. He's currently working on his doctorate at Wesley Seminary, and he's here today with his beautiful wife, Ashley, and his two lovely daughters, Maggie and Lainey, over here. And it's my pleasure to present Whit Martin.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here. To President Duncan, President Pro Tem Miller, to the general body, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to stand before you. In preparation for this morning, I had lots of things going through my mind. I thought, wow, what an honor, what a privilege to stand before this body. I wanted to put together this wonderful devotion and take an opportunity to pour into your life. And then my 6-year-old Lainey, she came up to me and she said, Daddy, you're going to give a devotion. I said, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And she said, I think you need to read the devotion that I like the best. And I went, well, there went all my material. And then I realized something. What better material than to stand before this body and allow someone who's 6 years old to pour into us? So I hope that you'll take a breath for just a second. I hope that you'll look and think about all the important things that are going on in your life, in the life of our great state, and that you'll breathe for just a second. So what an honor and a privilege it is to be with you. Growing up, I was given a devotional book. I've still got it, wanted to bring it with me. It's from Oswald Chambers. My youth director at my home church in Gainesville said, live by this, live by this. Oswald Chambers was very influential. His job was to pour into the life of Christian ministers and to prepare them to be leaders in the churches that they would serve. And so as he wrote and taught, his wife was able to put together a 365 devotion book to allow others to experience that same pouring into. In one of the devotions, it's actually passed earlier in the month of February 5th, if anybody feels like looking it up. It's from My Utmost for His Highest. For February 5th, he talks about the importance of being poured out as a drink offering. Our lives as leaders carry great weight and great responsibility. And so the question we have to ask ourselves constantly, am I ready to lead? Am I ready to have my life poured out as an offering for those that we represent, for those that we care for those that we are lifting up? Am I ready to be poured out as an offering, as a sacrifice for other people? But there's actually a greater question that I want to pose to you this morning. And I'll keep this very brief. Who's pouring into you? You have a lot to give. You have lots of responsibility. But are you being filled? Who's pouring into your heart, into your soul, into your life, so that you do have something to pour out as a sacrifice, as a gift, as an offering to the great state that we serve, to the country that we live in, to the communities that we represent? Who's pouring in to you? And so I'll offer this from a 6-year-old. I think this is what Miss Laney this morning would like for you to hear. And I want you to hear it with these optics. Yes, you have great things to do. Yes, you have important matters at hand. The past matters, and the future is in our hands. But for you as individuals, take just a second. Don't think about the past. Don't think and worry. Don't worry about the future. Hear these words. This is from Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. But Laney wants you to hear this today. Some days are long and tough, so stop and rest with me for a while. Don't worry about what's ahead. Don't think about the past or the future. Just focus on right here and right now with me. I created time to protect you. Because I am timeless, I can see your entire life from beginning to end all at the same time. But I knew that you couldn't bear to see your whole life all at once. So I created time to hide your future from you, to protect you. You can do nothing about the past, so just let it go. You cannot know the future, so put it aside. Meet me here and now, in this moment of time. Trust that I am with you, watching over you wherever that you go. The parting word that I would give for you this morning is simply this. of all the things that you have to do today, of all that you believe you have to pour out and offer to other people. I hope that you have someone, somebody, something pouring into you so that as you give of your life, as you give of yourself to all the responsibility before you, that you'll have something worth giving, that you'll have something life-giving, that you'll actually be able to pour yourselves out for others, and may it be in a way that is redemptive. Will you pray with me? God, we come to you today and we thank you for the business that is about to come. We thank you for the hard work that has led to today. We thank you for the work that is sitting in front of us that we will march through. God, in this moment and in this time, we simply ask that for each of us where we are this morning, that you would pour into us, that you would give us strength on one hand, that you would give us peace on the other. And so, God, work inside each of the hearts that are here today. May there be a redemptive good that is poured into our lives so that we may pour a redemptive good into the business and into the people that we will serve today. Amen.
At this time, we'd like to introduce the Doctor of the Day. This time, we'd like to introduce the Doctor of the Day, and I'd like to call on the Senator from the 40th to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it is my pleasure this morning to introduce to you Dr. Donald Siegel, constituent of Senate District 40 and a neighbor. Dr. Donald Siegel was born in Atlanta and received his medical degree from the Medical College of Georgia and his surgical residency from the University of Chicago. His practice of general trauma and surgery is in Decatur, Georgia, and he has privileges at Eastside Medical Center. Dr. Siegel is a retired Air Force colonel with 41 total years of service. He taught critical care transport from 2001 until he retired in 2008, and still teaches advanced trauma life support for the United States Army. He is the current president of the DeKalb Medical Society and is a delegate from the Medical Association of Georgia's House of Delegates. Without further ado, Dr. Donald Siegel.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here to serve you.
Thank you. Brevity is your specialty.
Yeah.
Are there any unanimous consents? We have some special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 161 by Senator Unterman of the 45th and others. A resolution commending the School Social Workers Association of Georgia and recognizing March 1st, 2019 as School Social Workers Association of Georgia Day, the state capitol, and for other purposes. Whereas each year, thousands of children utilize the services of school social workers, trained professionals who have obtained master's degrees and work to improve the lives of students in Georgia's schools. And whereas its members have a daily and direct impact on the lives of Georgia's children by ensuring that they attend school regularly and possess the resources necessary to learn and thrive. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the School Social Workers Association of Georgia and its members for the work done to help provide crisis and counseling services to Georgia's children and their families and improve Georgia's educational system, and recognize March 1st, 2019 as School Social Workers Association of Georgia Day at the state capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the Senator from the 45th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you. Good morning, Senators. Happy Friday. Everybody's ready to go back home and go to their district, and I hope you have safe journeys. Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to be able to have here today school social workers, and they brought part of their board with them, and there's some in the audience. We're delighted to have y'all here at the Capitol. When I look back on my educational career, some of my fondest memories are at the University of Georgia at Tucker Hall, where I studied social work. And the most important thing that social workers contribute, and especially in the school system, is taking care of families. They are literally family problem solvers, and they help educate our children and get them on the correct path to have a good journey throughout the rest of their life. I have visited many schools in my district. I understand what school social workers do and the pressure that is put on them, and it's mainly because of the volume of kids that they have to take care of and the societal problems. We're delighted to have them here in the Senate today. I know that they especially worked on the School Safety Act. They were important contributors to that, and we thank them for their contributions. With that, we're going to hear from the president of the association.
Good morning. It is certainly an honor to be here amongst you this morning, and we certainly appreciate this opportunity and the work and support that you provide us with each and every day. I am Terrell Rivers Cannon, the president of the School Social Workers Association of Georgia. Today, I have members with me, as stated as well, of the executive board. We are at the forefront of mental health in the state of Georgia as we do our very due diligence in keeping our students very safe and creating those many barriers as we create academic excellence for them, and along with those barriers that will allow them for academic excellence. We certainly appreciate, once again, this opportunity. We thank you. We will continue to do our due diligence as we kick off this month as Social Work Month. Today, we are here celebrating our Legislative Day here at the Capitol. That will begin at 1 p.m. downstairs in the South Wing. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. Have a great one.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you. Great job. Let's go over here and take some pictures. We have some additional special guests with us today. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 177 by Senators Tillery of the 19th and O's, a resolution recognizing and commending Zach Fowler on the grand occasion of his induction into the Georgia Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame and for other purposes. Whereas Zach Fowler has long been recognized by the citizens of the state for the vital role that he's played in radio entertainment and his deep personal commitment to the broadcast industry. And whereas he has diligently and conscientiously devoted innumerable hours of his time, talents, and energy toward the betterment of his community and state, as evidenced dramatically by his superlative service as general manager of the radio station of Vidalia Communications. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this remarkable and distinguished Georgian be appropriately recognized, now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Zach Fowler on his induction into the Georgia Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame and extend their most sincere best wishes for continued success. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 19th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I want to introduce to you my friend, someone who we've honored and someone who I think the state of Georgia is very good to honor, Zach Fowler, on the occasion of his induction into the Georgia Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. Zach's the managing director of Vidalia Communications. That's 3 radio stations down in southeast Georgia, and Vidalia has an extensive online news service as well, and his news breaks are the main source of news for a 50-mile radius area in southeast Georgia. He's tenacious, he's hardworking, but he's also fair. He's actively involved in our community, the Boys and Girls Club, United Way, Crime Stoppers. He's also an animal lover and is involved in our local Animal Protection Society. Before he came to Vidalia, the biggest thing that I think he's accomplished and what I also want to honor him for is the 27 years he spent in the U.S. Army, and he ended up as the head of the American Forces Network in Europe and in Asia. He's also on the stage with us here today. You'll see Mr. Bob Houghton, of the president of the Georgia Broadcasters Association, as well as Zach's wife of almost 58 years, Miss Ann Fowler. Thank you so much for allowing me to represent or to recognize today Mr. Zach. And Mr. Zach, if you'd like to say a few words, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Blake. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been quite a year for me being elected to our Hall of Fame. And then last month I was named our Citizen of the Year. And at Rotary yesterday they asked me, what are you going to do next? And they knew I was coming here today. And I said, well, I hadn't played Augusta National yet. So, Blake, if you can handle that, it'd be wonderful. There you go. Okay. I'm a graduate of the Henry W. Grady School of Journalism back in the 60s. And I learned my craft while I was working my way through college with the help of my wife, who helped us work our way. We got married as youngsters, and I had a mentor named H. Randolph Holder, who ran the radio station in Athens and hired many students to work for him. And it was there that I learned about the power of community service radio and what a radio station can do in a community if you do more than just play music. And Randolph was committed to serving Athens and Clark County and developed a network of officials that he got to know, and they would call us before it was all over with news to make sure that our community knew what was going on. And that has been the keystone of my career. I did the same thing when I was with the Armed Forces Radio and Television and around the world. People want to be informed, and they want to know the people that are informing them, and that's the beauty of small-town radio. And one thing that I worry about today is that too many of our journalists, instead of reporting objectively, which is how I was trained to do at the University of Georgia, a mixed opinion with their reporting. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be reporting the news, the good, the bad, and the ugly, both sides of the story, and let our listeners and viewers decide. The other thing I'm concerned about is social media, because so much of it is not vetted properly, and you don't know if it's true or not. And too often it's not true. And too many media people take it as gospel before they do their proper research to find out if it's true. So I would hope that one day we can get to the point that, and I hope we're training our people at the Grady School now, to do their homework before they report something, because you need to keep faith with your listeners and your viewers, and you can only do that if you tell the truth as you know it. Thank you for this honor. I appreciate it very much. And if I can go to the Masters, this is a wonderful thing. Thank you very much.
Does any senator wish to rise for a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. You may have noticed some beautiful ladies with red jackets on up in the gallery today. These ladies are representing the Cobb County Republican Women's Club and also the Georgia Federation of Republican Women. So help me to give them a good Senate welcome. Thank you. I yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise to share with you some remarks and an update on what's going on with the voucher bill. That's Senate Bill 173. And the short of it is that this bill is racing through the process in this chamber with little review. I call it actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I say to you, anybody that signed this bill, anybody that's voted for this bill in committee, you'd be well advised. I imagine it'll be coming to a rules calendar near us very soon. And you would be well advised to go home this weekend and talk with your stakeholders in public education. That school board chair that you may go to church with. Those teachers that lovingly invested themselves in your children. Those members who selflessly serve on your school board. That school superintendent. Do some due diligence on this bill, and I'll tell you why. The bill is being sold, and this is Senate Bill 173 that passed out of Finance yesterday. It's a mirror image of a bill in the House that has not moved out of the Ways and Means Committee. All right? That bill has been over there the entire session, has not moved out of committee. Senate Bill 173 was read for the first time February 25th. Today's March 1st. It's already out of committee. And why is it going so fast? I'll tell you, it's being sold as a bill to help little poor children, parents, get some money to send them to private school. It's being sold as a bill to help children with disabilities be able to get special services with state money that are not offered, that they're not receiving in the public school system. That's how it's being sold. But if you go to line 85, paragraph F, you will see that the language of the bill reads like this. It covers any student who spent the prior school year in attendance at a Georgia public school system or school systems for funding purposes during the previous October and March FTE calculations. That means this voucher bill, which you think you're voting for poor kids and disabled kids to get state dollars out of the public school system and go off with it to do what their parents choose to do as stipulated in this bill, that's not the case. Every school student in the state is eligible to go and apply for this money if this bill were to pass. Now you know teachers and educators influence voters, and you know we're all standing for our seats not very long, just next year. This is a bill that you could call the road to the minority. You all vote for this while we're telling teachers that we can't honor the $5,000 or the $3,000 commitment on their salaries because we don't have enough money. Yet the fiscal note, which was missing on this bill, in the House, the fiscal note shows billions of dollars being spent over 10 years, and that's money, state dollars, coming out of our public education system after we've underfunded QBE for 14 years, after we've had teachers furloughed, and after we've had school systems on practical life support that have not been able to fund 180 days of education. This is our public education system, folks. Don't fall for this voucher bill. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing that's being sold under false premises. We already have a voucher for children with disabilities, so forget that. And this bill opens it up to every student, a family of every student. Read line 85, and I'm going to take my seat because my time is up, but be very, very careful as you look at this voucher bill. And why has it not moved out of the House? And why, on March 1st, do we already have it up in the Rules Committee when it was introduced on the 25th of February? Danger, danger.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I'm so excited. Today is our senior day, and we have some of our outstanding seniors and constituents that have come today, and many are with the Senator Pro Tem from the 30th, and my district, the 35th. So we're recognizing and honoring those hardworking and diverse residents of Douglasville, of Union City, Fairburn, Palmetto, Hateville, East Point, and South Atlanta, and all over our beloved towns, both corporated and incorporated, and integral economic generators for the metropolitan Atlanta area. So we recognize our seniors, and on March the 27th, those that are 100 or more will be here. But today we have Dr. Dolores Franklin, who is standing over here against the wall, and she's the chairperson, as well as other members in the gallery, as well, and here with her, of the Golden years. Okay, you heard it. And we have our man of the year, who is right here, J.C. Sebastian, who works very hard in South Fulton and Douglas County as well. So we have so many people in the gallery too. And at this time, can we give a warm welcome to all of them? So everyone in the gallery, please stand and receive a warm Senate welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And we have some food downstairs, and we better have some more food or they'll beat me up. So I got to find more food for them a little later. We're going to take care of you. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, all of our seniors who have come from those areas, and welcome to your state capital. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Today I rise to recognize and celebrate a very special person. Words alone are not enough. To express how happy I am. You are celebrating another year of your life. My wish for you on your birthday is that you are and always will be happy and healthy. Don't ever change. Have a wonderful, happy, healthy birthday, now and forever. Happy birthday to the senator from the 44th.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have to make sure that our law enforcement officers have the tools that they need to de-escalate situations. What situation am I specifically talking about? Post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. PTSD is rampant throughout our society, in particular for military veterans, especially those who served in combat in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the ongoing combat areas that we are involved in. When our law enforcement officers are responding to situations involving a person experiencing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, the appropriate training can make the difference between a tragic ending and one in which the individual is able to get the assistance they need. That is why I have introduced legislation, Senate Bill 193, to mandate PTSD training for officers so that they'll be able to respond appropriately and efficiently and effectively to individuals who exhibit symptoms of PTSD. This is a good bill that helps everyone. I urge your support. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the will.
You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair recognizes the senator from the 51st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 159 be withdrawn from the Committee of Public Safety and be committed to the Committee on Transportation.
Will the Secretary read the caption?
Senate Bill 159 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. A bill will be titled enactment Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to provide for the operation of motorized mobility devices and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Have both chairmen spoken? Senators ask for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 159 be withdrawn from the Committee on Public Safety and be committed to the Committee on Transportation. Is there objection? No objection. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to the bill on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea, opposed nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 45, the nays are 0. The bills on the local consent calendar, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. For what purpose does the majority leader rise?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 120 be engrossed.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 120 be engrossed. Is there objection? There's objection with the majority leader. He waives. Senator from the 41st, would you like to speak to your objection? It's time we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, stand, rise, and be counted. Is it rise, stand, and be counted? Or rise, stand, and be? Reverse. The yeas are 30, the nays are 17. The motion passes. We are now going on to the rules calendar. We are moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, will you read the caption on Senate Bill 37?
Senate Bill 37 by Senator Ligon of the Third and others. A bill will be titled enactment Article 2, Chapter 5, Title 13 of the OCGA relating to the statute of frauds. So to clarify that a mutual agreement to modify or alter an existing promise, agreement, contract, or commitment that is subject to the statute of frauds shall itself be in writing and subject to the statute of frauds, to provide that a mutual agreement to cancel, revoke, or rescind a promise, agreement, contract, or commitment that is subject to the statute of frauds shall itself be in writing or subject to the statute of frauds and for other purposes. Mr. President, State Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 37. A bill will be titled enactment Article 2, Chapter 5, Title 13 of the OCGA relating to the statute of frauds, so as to clarify an agreement to modify, alter, cancel, repeal, revoke, release, or rescind a promise, agreement, contract, or commitment that is subject to the statute of frauds shall itself be in writing and subject to the statute of frauds and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd to speak to Senate Bill 37.
Thank you, Mr. President. In our code, we have a provision called the Statute of Frauds, which requires certain types of contracts to be in writing in order for them to be enforceable. And there are actually 7 of those categories of contracts listed in the bill. Last year, the Court of Appeals in the case of Crop Production Services v. Moy issued a ruling which held that these types of contract could be terminated by a verbal agreement. And this has created a lot of concern in the real estate industry where they rely on the certainty of these written contracts, in the banking industry which relies on the certainty that comes from requiring these contracts to be in writing. And so what Senate Bill 37 does is actually add another category to these contracts which are subject to the statute of frauds, and that is simply that any contract, any termination of a contract, or a contract to terminate a contract subject to the statute of frauds itself must be in writing. And so I would, unless there are any questions, Mr. President, I would ask the favorable support of this bill.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Oh, he's yielded the well. He yielded the well. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 1. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, will you read the caption to Senate Bill 182?
Senate Bill 182 by Senator Ligon III and others, the bill to title enactment Article 4 of Chapter 4 of Title 27 of the OCGA relating to seafood, so as to provide for mariculture development to amend Code Section 12.5.295 of the OCGA relating to applicability of activities in coastal marshlands, so as to revise and add an exemption certain and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment offers a funding substitute to Senate Bill 182. A bill with title enactment Article 4, Chapter 4, Title 27 of the OCGA relating to seafood, so as to provide for maricultural development, to provide for legislative findings, to provide for definitions, to provide for unlawful acts, to provide for permitting, to provide for closed approved growing areas, to provide for approval to harvest and close approved growing areas, to revise tagging requirements, to provide for leasing requirements of water bottoms as subtitle water bottoms for harvesting of wild or maricultured shellfish, to provide for revocation of permits, to provide for a performance bond, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 3rd to speak to Senate Bill 182.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the early 20th century, Georgia was one of the top producers of shellfish in the nation, if not the #1 producer. But unfortunately, through over-harvesting of our oysters, the industry declined and is just very small. There are only about 8 producers that harvest our wild oysters in our state now. But states around us and up and down the coast have expanded their shellfish industries by allowing the harvesting or the farming of oysters in our coastal waters. And this is done by seeding oysters on a cage, placing them in the river, and then harvesting them when they mature. In Georgia, our wild oysters are primarily in clusters, which are not really favored by restaurants, and although they're very tasty and they're very good, it's difficult to market them. The farmed oysters, though, are grown and they come out on a single shell, which make them very marketable for selling in restaurants and in other places. So this is a tremendous opportunity for our state. There are projections that the industry could grow to be a $40 or $50 million industry. And what this bill does is establish the regulatory framework to allow that to happen in Georgia. It authorizes the state to go through a process to grant leases where farmers would actually lease a portion of the river and then farm their oysters and then harvest them. It establishes a regulatory process to ensure that any of the oyster cultures or seeds that are brought into our state are disease-free, because it's important that we ensure that we don't introduce any strange diseases into our waters that could harm our wild oysters. It also establishes a process to regulate the harvesting of those oysters. This is critical and it's important because you have to be careful, because if you don't, then people can get sick, and there's some illnesses that are pretty serious that you could acquire by consuming a raw oyster. So, Mr. President, I would ask everyone's favorable support of the bill and I'll yield the well unless there are any questions.
You have questions. The chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir, I yield.
Now, as you described, it was once a flourishing industry.
That's right.
Then through maybe over-harvesting or things that would needed to change, we have your bill, and thank you for that.
Yeah.
Could you describe to me the different varieties of oysters?
I'll be glad to. Well, you have the wild oysters, which are called diploid oysters. They have 2 chromosomes. Now, these oysters that we'll be harvesting are triploid oysters, and they have 3 chromosomes, and they're produced by crossing a tetraploid oyster, which has 4 chromosomes with one that has 2 chromosomes, and you get the oyster that we'll be planting. So that's the different type of oyster.
Well, thank you, Senator. In fact, through my education in Northwest Georgia, I knew that. But could you tell me, are there any other type of oysters that this would affect or not affect?
I'm not familiar with any other types of oysters. Perhaps I would invite you to come to the well and speak to that.
A dare. Well, since it's not a double dog dare, let me suggest that let's have a private meeting. Let me describe some other oysters for you that may need protection too. So I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Is this a parallel bill to one that originated in the House? And could you tell me what happened to that bill?
I don't know anything about that, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to carry this for the department and for the many people along the coast that may want to engage in oyster farming.
Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Senator, did this bill originate with the Department of Natural Resources?
Yes, sir. It originated from the Department of Natural Resources. They were working with some other representatives over in the House on this bill.
And has similar legislation been enacted in other states?
I don't know if there's similar legislation exactly like this, but other states have enacted legislation which has allowed the farming of oysters in their waters.
Thank you.
And this is a result of consultation with those states to determine what has been, what has worked there, and to try to avoid some of the errors and mistakes that they've made.
Sir, further yield?
Yes.
You know, is it not true that all of the natural elements are interrelated? Is there any negative aspects on any other marine life by changing the pattern of harvesting oysters? And did you have any input from groups like the Sierra Club or environmental protection groups on what they thought the impact might be, and were they for or against, or took any position to your knowledge?
The main objection that I heard was that you would not be able to harvest oysters during the summertime, and that's not exactly correct. First of all, everyone on the coast knows that you don't eat oysters in months that don't have an R in it, because when the waters are warm, you have to be very careful because they're more susceptible to transmitting a disease. But if you carefully regulate it and you grow the oysters underwater, then you can harvest them if you follow the proper protocol. The bill will allow the harvesting of oysters in the summer, but the DNR has to permit it if they determine that the conditions are correct for the harvesting. Just like the DNR regulates the shrimping industry. It's not open all year round. There are times when they can open and close depending on the condition of the shrimp in the water. So we're not aware of any adverse effect. The seed that is used, it is a sterile oyster. The triploid oyster is sterile, so it's not going to reproduce and affect the wild oysters that are growing in our waters. And there hasn't been that adverse impact in other states that we're aware of.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes, sir, I'll yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for bringing this bill. I think you probably answered my question when speaking to the minority leader. I was looking at lines 22 through 24 in the bill that talked about the summer conditions, and I think what you stated to him was that the department will determine in the summertime if those oysters could actually be harvested.
Yes, Senator, that is correct. And actually, if you'll look at lines 226 through 238, it says that a master harvester can actually harvest shellfish during a closed season. Now, for wild oysters, the season is closed during a certain time of the year, during the summertime. But if the conditions are correct, that can be open for this type of oyster farming.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll take one more question.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, are you aware of the term Vibrio?
Vibrio.
I didn't know if the senator was aware that Vibrio is not a Latin legal term, in which case you have known it, but is a bacteria that causes 100 deaths in the U.S. each year, and it's very important that this product is regulated. And if the senator, would the senator further yield?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know if the senator was aware that my next door neighbor in northwest Georgia, who is an expert in oysters and shares Chattooga County with me, if you're aware that the senator from the 52nd had a restaurant whose primary product was oysters that he sold for 18 years.
I did not know that. I didn't know, but you're right. It has to be regulated, and in fact, if there are only 2 cases of someone becoming ill from oysters from an area, then that section of the river is closed for at least 21 days.
And this is protection for the consumers.
This is protection for the consumer, exactly.
You have no more questions.
Thank you. I'll yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak on behalf of Senate Bill 182. As a senator from the South and a person who consumes a lot of oysters, I want to bring some clarity to this. I support the senator from the 3rd and his legislation because there are 2 types of oysters. There's wild oysters on coastal Georgia, which normally comes in clusters, and there are single oysters that when you go in restaurants and stores and you ask for oysters, they usually come out in singular shells, and they tell you these oysters come from everywhere else but Georgia. You just say, I want some oysters. That's all. We're getting them from Maine. We're getting them from Boston. We're getting them from other places. And this legislation will allow us to get these single oysters that can be made in Georgia for Georgians. Another thing, though, in coastal Georgia, although we sell a lot of, and I eat a lot of oysters and they're in clusters, we're opening up another industry for Georgians on our coast. These cultured oysters that are singular, that are also sterile, and will be tightly scrutinized, will just help our coastal workers find new industry and new opportunities for growth of this industry. So I'll be supporting this measure, and Mr. President, I yield the well.
The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. For what purpose does the senator from the 3rd rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Would it be shellfish to vote against this bill?
Certain the senator from the 53rd gave you that. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. It is my great honor to introduce our First Lady to this body. It's often said that the best way to get to know somebody is to go on vacation with their family. Our families, the Duncans and the Kemps, got to spend a couple of weeks together around Georgia in an RV. We've gotten to know the Kemps very, very well, and we like what we see. It has been a great opportunity for our families to grow together. It is my honor to be able to introduce the First Lady to the Senate for the first time, and thankful for her support today for Senate Bill 158 and all the work that she's doing for human trafficking and awareness around the state. So if you will, please give a warm Senate welcome to our First Lady. Will the Secretary read the caption of Senate Bill 158?
Senate Bill 158 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others. A bill be titled enactment Titles 9, 15, 16, 17, and 41 of the OCGA relating to civil practice, courts, crimes, and offenses, criminal procedure, and nuisances, respectively, so as to provide additional safeguards and protections against human trafficking, to authorize DFACs provide care and supervision to children who are victims of human trafficking, to expand prohibitions against trafficking of persons for labor or sexual servitude, provide for a short title, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 17th to speak to Senate Bill 158.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring to you Senate Bill 158. When the governor and First Lady were traveling that RV last year around the state, they heard from many Georgians about an ongoing underground industry that's been thriving in the shadows of our state. As they learned more about human trafficking, they both promised to do whatever they could, if elected, to continue what this body has led on for the past several years, and use the power we have at the state level to take down this unspeakable industry. That's what Senate Bill 158 does. It's the next step in the battle against human trafficking in our state. It's the Anti-Human Trafficking Protective Response Act. In sections 1, 2, and 1.4 of the bill, we're providing resources from the state to help the minors that find themselves as victims of human trafficking. We're allowing DFACs to provide emergency services to these victims immediately, making certain they are being referred to the proper certified victim services organizations, and that our juvenile courts have the ability to take these victims out of an environment that supports sexual servitude. Second, in sections 1.5 and 1.9 of the bill, we're giving more tools for our prosecutors to shut down a business owner that knows that human trafficking is occurring on his or her property, and instead of doing something about it, decides to make money off of it instead. Finally, in sections 1.6 and 1.7, we're modifying our law to ensure we treat every minor under the age of 18 that's a victim of human trafficking with the support and respect they need and deserve, by making certain a minor cannot be charged with prostitution and making the penalties for sexual offenses the same when it involves any victim that's a minor versus having lighter sentences for victims that are 16 or 17 years of age. I ask for your vote for Senate Bill 158. I also want to take a moment to thank our First Lady, Marty Kemp, who, as you heard, is joining us on the floor today. Not only do we appreciate you leading the way to ensure that Senate Bill 158 gets to the governor's desk, but also, as announced earlier this week, we want to thank you for being a co-chair for the new Georgians for Refuge, Action, Compassion, and Education Commission, or, as it's easier to say, the Grace Commission. Our First Lady will be joining co-chairs Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones from the House and GBI Director Vic Reynolds to lead the Grace Commission. The commission will also be comprised of public officials, law enforcement, for-profit and non-profit organizations, faith-based institutions, and subject matter experts to tackle human trafficking, serve justice for victims, hold bad actors accountable, and end human trafficking. With the help of the First Lady, we'll continue to learn more about what we can do as a legislature to continue to fight to end human trafficking in Georgia. Thank you, Madam First Lady, for your leadership, your service, and for making sure that you and the governor keep the promises you made to the people of the state last year. And with that, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
I ask for your favorable support of Senate Bill 158.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 45th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of Senate Bill 158 and welcome Georgia's First Lady to the Senate chambers. I believe this may be the first or second time, I'm not sure, but we're absolutely delighted that she has chosen this subject matter. And as you know, I'm here to say thank you to every member, 56 senators, that has worked on this important topic, and it literally started in this room 10 years ago. We have been working on this subject for 10 years now, a decade, and that is remarkable. Not only did we create the infrastructure that supported it, we have changed about a dozen laws that affect children particularly, and we created new laws. And fortunately, as we started out with child sex trafficking, now we have evolved and we have gotten into human bondage and human trafficking of older people, as in adults older than 16 years old. We want to thank especially the enforcement community. One of the highlights of my year now is to go up to Young Harris, Georgia. And at that meeting, we have about 200 law enforcement officers from the local government level that have been trained by the FBI and the GBI. And they meet as a think tank that they can get together and propose changes in the system. But more importantly, they're working in your districts, whether they're doing sting operations, they're working on the streets, and they are looking and saving children every single day. And that's a good thing. I want to thank former director, GBI director Vernon Keenan, who had the insight and the tenacity to pursue this highly volatile topic area and do a good job with it. Our former Attorney General, Sam Mullins, he was on the front line. He was on the front line in the United States as an Attorney General. And now Chris Carr took up the banner and has done a phenomenal job. I also want to thank and invite you, if you ever want to go to the quarterly meetings of CJCC, that is actually the state agency that is over this subject matter and the system of care. They do a fabulous job. All of the advocacy organizations, when we first started out, there was not one advocacy organization in the state of Georgia that focused specifically on child sex trafficking. Now there are literally hundreds. Some of the first ones was Georgia Cares. Georgia Cares was created in this room, and that is the infrastructure that we created to rescue children, to not just take them off the street and throw them away and say, well, we took you off the street. We created a system of care, therapeutic services that rehabilitate these children, and it's a wonderful thing. I want to thank Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. You know, to begin with, we didn't know what to do with these kids. We had to train the nurses and physicians, the point of entry where these kids come to. They have done a fabulous job. So Georgia Cares, I want to thank Street Grace. When I didn't know what to do, I went to the biggest church in my district and said, I need help. And you know what? 1 year later, they formed an NGO, Street Grace. I want to thank them. Out of Darkness, Demand an End, Wellspring Living, the Georgia Baptist Convention was the very first place in the very first group that stepped up to the place for residential housing of these children. Thank you, Georgia Baptist Convention. And then guess what? One of our biggest industries, our Fortune 500 company, guess who stepped up to the plate? And this was controversial. They didn't have to do it. Delta Airlines. And not only, we're so proud to have Delta Airlines in Georgia, not only did they do it in Georgia, not only did they do it in the United States, but they took the issue of human trafficking globally and started training their employees. I want to say a special thank you to Ed Bashan, the CEO of Delta Airlines. I also want to say last week we were at UPS. Just think of the transformation that we're making from where it started off in this room. The pinnacle is when you voted on the constitutional amendment to be able to help children with child sex trafficking. It is the highest voter winning ever on the ballot. 83.3% of Georgians agreed with 56 senators and put it on the ballot and said, yes, we are going to support this measure. Yes, we're going to do something about it. And yes, Georgians care about children. Now, let's fast forward to our new administration. We all know former Governor Nathan Deal and Sandra Deal did a humongous lift in helping with this transformation in this infrastructure. We are absolutely delighted when he handed over the mantle to the new governor, Brian Kemp and Mrs. Kemp, our new First Lady, they have picked up the ball. His very first engagement was at Atlantic Station before he was sworn into office, and his very first subject matter was human bondage and human trafficking and doing something about it. So I commend them for Senate Bill 158. I commend the senator from the 17th carrying this. We look forward to carrying this banner here in the state Senate and charging down and stopping human trafficking and human bondage in the state of Georgia. Thank you very much, and I ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 158, and I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think all of you folks have heard that I was a federal prosecutor. I was a federal prosecutor here in the Northern District of Atlanta for 8 years. A big part of my prosecutions involved human trafficking and sex trafficking. In fact, one of my very first prosecutions involved a young child involved in sex trafficking. If you ever want to cry, go talk to one of these victims. I share that with you because the only time I have seen a federal agent cry was on the witness stand when we went to trial on one of these cases. I literally can stand here right now, close my eyes, and roll the video. I won't go into all the history. The senator of the 45th has been a leader in this area, and I first came to know her, in fact, when I was a prosecutor, and all the federal agents were talking about this great senator who was involved in these efforts. And I'm so proud that our governor and first lady have taken this banner to move it forward, because for years as a federal prosecutor, I noticed the inconsistencies between federal law and state law in protecting our children. And this bill does that. In fact, when I first read the bill, that was the first thing I noticed, was that the age had been changed, and that was a critical difference. And I was so pleased to see that. I also saw that all the groups, all the stakeholders had been brought into the process, and they all had talked to me about how excited they are about this bill and what good work had been done. I have heard nothing but positive, and I also know from my own professional experience that this is a great bill. It is a great bill. It is part of the legacy of our state that we protect our children and indeed older people from involuntary servitude, basically modern day slavery, and involuntary sex acts, and all the commercialization that comes around that. I'm particularly happy that people who benefit from this money can be prosecuted, because in the past that was difficult. So it allows prosecutions further down the line, such that if you run a hotel motel and you're making money from human trafficking or sex trafficking, you can now be prosecuted. And that is also a great thing, because that will help us protect folks who are living in extended stay hotels and motels from becoming victims. So I rise to encourage everyone to support this bill. I am proud to be part of this effort. I am proud of the senator from the 17th for carrying this bill. I'm proud of all the work the you senators have done before to get it to this point, and I'm proud of Mrs. Kemp and the governor, I should say the First Lady, I apologize, the First Lady and the governor for taking this up as a big initiative for us. It's a great day for Georgia. Please vote yes. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. many years ago, I've had 2 tenures in the Senate. And when I came in '94, it was horrific things happening on some of our major streets right here in Atlanta, Georgia. I was at my weekly hair appointment, and I saw these little girls running up Metropolitan, up and down, and then they would disappear for a while, and then there they were again. And I asked my hairstylist, what's going on? And I realized that these kids who are 9, 10, 11, and 12 were being put on the street. So I immediately I had just gotten elected, so I wanted to do something about the problem that I saw and to save these young people. So I started my crusade at that time. I think the first bill that this Senate and House was able to pass was a bill to make it a felony to pimp or pander our children 18 and under. So I thank you. Years later, every year we would try to chip away at this problem, this horrific problem. It's a real shame. But we did get them off the street corners, but now they're using the media. And I also represent Fulton Industrial Boulevard. When they closed some areas down, the next thing I know, all those hotels and motels started having those little kids again. These are not what we're talking about, people under 18, under 16 even. And even more recent than that, we have the problem on industrial areas where the buildings had closed down and they had moved to other places. So those big empty buildings were being bought again. And I couldn't understand why a car would pull in and then you don't see them for a few hours and they pull out. And then I found out that the new sex trafficking was, since we're close to the airport, they would pick these people up who had already applied for little children, bring them in, and didn't even have to get out the car because they drive right into the warehouses. And they did whatever they do in one of those rooms that they had made up for them. I'm talking about now, not years ago. So, of course, the city of South Fulton and those other groups that I represent started pressing that issue and locking people up and closing down those places. But it's still going on. So thank you very much for this Senate legislation. Every year we do something to strengthen the legislation. We still have those young people who have, unfortunately, they've been in this business, they know nothing else. All they know is that they think they're not loved. They draw them in, they get their hair fixed and nails done, or makeover, and a new dress once a month. So they think that this person loves them, and they're doing this. And thank you, Senator from the 45th, for all the work that you've done. I'm so glad that I could stand by you. I'm so happy that our First Lady of Georgia is right on top of this issue, too. I've seen her before now, not just now, but fighting for this issue. So let us stand together, all of us together, because we have to save our children. We have to stop the madness. They can be from another state, come to our international airport, get in a car, come over to an empty warehouse that they've made look like bedrooms inside, do whatever they do, and leave out. We have to stop this. I know it's a private club, they call it, but we have to make sure that we do something about these so-called private clubs. So I'm standing in favor of this bill. I hope that everyone will vote for it, and let's look at doing even more in the future. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I yield the will.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, will you read the caption of Senate Bill 97?
Senate Bill 97 by Senator Stone of the 23rd and others, a bill entitled Enactment of Article 5 of Chapter 4 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to self-service storage facilities so as to provide for and limit fees charged and collected by self-service storage facilities for the late payment of rent, to provide for liens and enforcement of liens, for fees for the late payment of rent, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize a senator from the 23rd to speak to Senate Bill 97.
Thank you, Mr. President. SB 97 addresses a very narrow matter involving the self-storage industry, a cottage industry around the state that involves about 1,500 small businesses. What it does is it allows to be included in the standard form contract, which is already in our code, the provision for collection of late payment fees. And then it also caps those fees at $20 or 20% of the late payment, whichever is greater. This brings it in uniformity to other states that have addressed the issue, and it also does not require or set a floor on late payment fees. That's provided by the parties in their contract, but it just simply caps them. And the amount is in line with the average rental cost in Georgia, which is between $95 and $120 a month. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I would urge your support of SB 97. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
You have questions. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 38th.
Thank you. Will the senator yield?
Yes.
I'll be honest with you, it was so noisy in here, I couldn't hear your presentation very well. But what I think I heard you say, that the fee cannot be any more than $20 per month or 20%, whichever is the greatest? Okay. What are the fees running about now?
Well, now there's no provision, no uniformity, but around the country where there are statutes that do set caps, they're in line with this bill.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Does the chairman yield?
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understand what we're aiming at here. Are these charges currently charged?
They're in some contracts, I'm sure. I don't know that there's a study of that, but this would presumably they'd be allowed by freedom of contract. Parties can address it, put anything they want in a contract. So I would assume there are, but this caps them.
And does the chairman further yield?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of the cap?
The cap is just to recognize a standard that is customary around the country.
And I know further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have no more questions.
I urge your support of SB 97.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 43, the nays are 10. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption to Senate Bill 120.
Senate Bill 120 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill entitled enactment Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 28 of the OCGA, relating to fiscal bills generally so as to require an economic analysis to be conducted by the state auditor of certain income tax credits and exemptions from sales and use taxes according to a schedule and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Finance offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 120, a bill entitled enactment Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 20 of the OCGA, relating to fiscal bills generally so as to require an economic analysis to be conducted by the state auditor of certain income tax credits and exemptions from sales and use taxes according to a schedule and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 56th to speak to Senate Bill 120.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring to you today the Georgia Tax Credit Business Case Act. This is the outcome of a study committee we performed over 2 years ago. And the goal of that committee was to look at each one of our credits and exemptions to make sure we had a return on investment for those for the state. The Senate has always led as good fiduciaries. We continued that process last year, passing several pieces of legislation. Some of those tax credits we found to be extremely beneficial. Some we did not, and we actually repealed 3 last year. This bill, in its exact form, passed last year unanimously from this body, and it just goes through each set of exemptions and credits year over year on a rotating basis to make sure that the economic analysis is done and is provided back to the Department of Audits, to the Finance Committee here in the Senate, and the Ways and Means Committee in the House of Representatives, beginning this year and ending in 2025. I want to thank Lieutenant Governor, President of his body, for his great support of fiscal responsibility as well as our Chairman of Appropriations and our Chairman of Finance, who have done an extraordinary job. If there are no questions, I will yield the will.
You have no questions. Chair would like to recognize the Minority Leader to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I just want to applaud the chairman for bringing this bill forward. This is a bill that almost a decade ago that my caucus put a very similar measure to review and make these evaluations. We just want to also caution each member that the devil's in the details, so we need to make sure that any evaluations are always done in an effective manner, trying to get to the true aspects about the bill that will impact Georgia citizens. So thank you very much. I recommend your vote for this bill.
The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53. The nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 133?
Senate Bill 133 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to provide for modernization and updates to amend various provisions of the OCGA for purposes of conformity and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass. And by Senator Jones of the 25th. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 16th to speak to Senate Bill 133.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate this. Senate Bill 133 is a department cleanup bill that basically cleans up language from old language to really new, more modern day language that we're dealing with today. It's been said that it's a bill about nothing, but it's really just changing terms there. There are two things that deal with felonies, that the fees have been raised from $500 to $1,000 and from $1,000 to $2,000 maxes for the insurance commissioner to be able to impose. Other than that, it's a pretty innocuous bill, and that's it.
You have no questions. Mr. Secretary, we have an amendment to read.
Amendment 1 by Senator Jordan of the 6th offers the following amendment to Senate Bill 133 by inserting the following at lines 1178, 33-24-59.25a. As used in this code section, the term preventative services means screening, tests, counseling, and preventative medicines or treatments provided or conducted to prevent medical illness or condition prior to symptoms or physical manifestations of such medical illness or condition. 2, short-term health benefit policy or certificate means any individual or group plan, policy, or contract for health care services for a coverage period of less than 1 year and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 6th to speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Basically what this is, it is a pre-existing condition provision that deals with short-term health insurance. So just to kind of walk y'all through, anybody who goes to law school, when we were dealing with the interpretation of pre-existing condition exclusions in policies of health insurance, one of the things that insurance companies always had to do to show that it was a pre-existing condition was either to offer objective evidence or subjective evidence. Now, subjective evidence would be, for example, let's take breast cancer, that I had a lump in my breast, I knew I had a lump, I didn't go to the doctor specifically, went and got health insurance, and then went to the doctor. And so then a health insurance company could say then, no, that was a pre-existing condition. The second evidentiary thing would be objective, meaning I actually got a diagnosis of breast cancer and then went and got health insurance so that I could get coverage for treatment. And the whole point is that there has to be some kind of knowledge or notice in terms of the person, the insured and the insurer, because it's really a contract that you're entering into. I got a case a couple of years ago where an attorney actually left a large law firm to start her own firm. She got a short-term health insurance policy. Now, what a lot of folks don't know is that under the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, as y'all know, pre-existing condition exclusions are not prohibited, okay? They're not. So, but under short-term policies, they are. She really wasn't aware of that. And what happened is she got this policy of insurance that was only supposed to last 3 months for her. About a month into it, she got a diagnosis of breast cancer and then had to have pretty aggressive treatment, including a double mastectomy. It was pretty bad. The health insurance company came back and said, no, we're not going to cover your treatment because it was pre-existing. She said, what are you talking about? She was like, I didn't have a diagnosis. I never had any symptoms. I had no clue that this was even happening. This was a disease process even happening within me. But what the health insurance company said is, look, it was cancer. It pre-existed. That's it. And they acknowledged, and the evidence was uncontroverted, that she had no subjective knowledge and or objective knowledge. I had to take that case all the way up to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And for anybody who has ever litigated, especially insurance contracts or anything like that, the 11th Circuit is not necessarily known as the friendliest of appellate courts. But they were so outraged by what had happened that not only did they reverse the summary judgment that had been granted to the insurance company, but they granted summary judgment sua sponte on their own in favor of the woman who had gotten breast cancer treatments, and the health insurance company failed to cover it. So this is really just kind of a cleanup. For whatever reason, under Georgia law, we have never actually dealt with the issue of whether we have the objective or the subjective standard. All this is to say that the health insurance company, in order for them to exclude something as a pre-existing condition, they just have to come forward and say, well, the insured either knew or should have known that they had this condition, ergo they can exclude it under the policy. And I'll take any questions. And I know that y'all are nervous because y'all always think I'm trying to do something to y'all. But there is actually a 50-page opinion out of the 11th Circuit that I'm happy to share with y'all. And this is not a controversial thing. Short-term health plans can exclude pre-existing conditions. All this does is just to make sure that the insured and the insurer are on the same page, and that we don't end up actually giving them more power just to exclude anything. And I'll take any questions.
You have several questions.
Fantastic.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Absolutely.
So if I'm reading this correctly, this amendment would insert some text at line 1178. And beginning on line 1154, it is proposed an amendment to Code Section 33-24-59.2. overlooked that. I thought you were replacing that, but there is a difference there, so this would be a subsequent.
Right. This is
code
actually an insertion. It's a freestanding bill that I filed in order to deal with the situation we dealt with the insured here who could not get her breast cancer treatment covered and had to have a double mastectomy and chemo while fighting the insurance company, even though there was no reason for her to have ever known that she actually had this underlying condition. It's something that could happen to any one of us, and it shouldn't.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Senator. Have you spoken to the author about this amendment prior to taking the well?
Yes.
Further yield?
Hmm?
Further yield?
Yes.
Did you speak to the Department of Insurance about this amendment?
No, I didn't. And Senator, I know that normally this is something we would want to have happen, especially with a department bill. But with respect to, I was sitting there, I realized that this actually covered the area for this bill. And as all y'all know, we are dealing with a pretty significant time limit here. And it's one of those things where I know that folks, we're running out of time, and this is an important addition to the law, and it should be added.
Further yield, one more question?
Sure.
So since this is so important, don't you think it would be important, since it's an agency bill, for us to be able to let them weigh in on this?
They have fixes in their bill, Senator, with respect to little things. This is actually a whole new addition. And in terms of how they believe, this is something that actually just reflects existing, or should go into existing law in terms of the evidentiary standard.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, will you yield for a question, please?
Yes.
So you're not, this bill, or the language here in your amendment is not trying to prevent health care plans from excluding pre-existing conditions. It's just trying to clearly define what a pre-existing condition is.
Yes, that's exactly it. Because under short-term health plans, as you know, you can exclude pre-existing conditions. But there needs to be some kind of contours as to exactly what that means, because a contract of insurance is just a contract, and there has to be a meeting of the minds in terms of what the expectations of the parties are. And so if I don't have any knowledge subjectively or objectively of a condition, then it doesn't make sense then that treatment or coverage for that condition can then be negated or not covered.
And as far as you know, that's not already defined in the code somewhere else?
It absolutely isn't. And to be quite frank, I was very surprised because when I first started litigating the case, having taken insurance and dealt with a lot of insurance issues through the years, I was surprised that there wasn't an objective or subjective standard that had been adopted even by the courts. And in Georgia, it had not. And so this is absolutely necessary, especially because we know that there's going to be a proliferation of short-term health plans that are going to be sold in this state after the administration's regulations basically kind of extending their reach. So it's important that we protect consumers as much as possible with the idea that pre-existing conditions in these short-term plans can be excluded.
Senator, would you yield for further questions?
Absolutely.
So we have just recently passed legislation to allow the governor's office to seek a 1332 waiver, which would be a waiver from the Affordable Care Act provisions. I don't know what the waiver will be asking for, but it may indeed ask for us to be able to sell maybe group plans even that exclude pre-existing conditions, for example. So I'm concerned that we're at on such short notice tinkering with that. I do applaud you for bringing this up. I mean, I would have thought this was already in the code, but what concerns me is in section 2 there where it says within 6 months preceding the effective date of coverage. What if somebody had a condition that they didn't have insurance and they found out they had a certain condition, but it wasn't aggressive where they had to seek treatment immediately, so they just waited out the 6 months and then bought a policy? I mean, the 6 months kind of bothers me.
That's the point of the objective or the subjective, right? A lot of states have adopted either one or the other. But the whole point is to make it as protective with respect to the insurance companies to some extent in terms of their grounds for exclusion of coverage, to have both the objective and the subjective. So if you should have known, because maybe you have this condition, maybe you have a mole or a spot and you should go get it checked out, but you purposefully don't, that's subjective because you should have known. And then the objective is if you actually got a diagnosis. With respect to the 1332 section of the bill we just passed, that's why this is so necessary right now. Because the 1332 section, as you know, would allow the selling of short-term health plans or a proliferation. With respect to short-term health plans, this is not group insurance. So this doesn't affect policies of group insurance. This only goes to short-term health plans.
Okay, so the 6 months is a either or. So if in the scenario I was describing, if I found out or was diagnosed with a condition and I waited 8 months to seek treatment, I would be, the section 1 would exclude the coverage. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is if you knew or should have known, we're not going to let you defraud an insurance company. That's the whole point. But we have to have some parameters so that so policies of insurance aren't a nullity. It's, for example, with the young woman that I represented, basically all cancer to some extent is pre-existing. I mean, we have cancer cofactors, and that is literally, I saw someone laughing, that is literally the argument that they made to the court. And it was one of those things that was accepted by a court because there weren't any evidentiary standards. I mean, this is one of these things that adds the balance where we're trying to balance the rights of people entering into a contract. This gives consumers the ability to say, if you knew or should have known that you had a condition, that you can't defraud insurance companies. But it also says insurance companies, if you're going to preclude coverage for treatment of a certain condition based on a pre-existing condition exclusion, then you need to be able to come forward and say that the person either knew or they should have known.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator yield?
Yes.
Did you say you had dropped a bill to this subject matter previously in this session?
Yes.
I understand what you're saying, and I think you probably have some good points. I do have some difficulties because it's coming up on the floor and it's hard to try to vet everything out on the floor. Isn't it true that I would prefer to have seen this in a committee meeting and fully vetted that out? That might have been a good question for you. But
The senator knows of what he speaks, but so would have I. So it's one of those things where this was sent to HHS. It is very busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. And it's one of those things where I'm happy to vet it backwards and forwards, but I have to be given the opportunity to do so.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 25th.
Does Senator yield?
Yes.
As I was sitting here looking at my list, since I am the insurance chair, and I was looking at my list of committees, I didn't recognize any coming from the senator from the 6th. But I think you just clarified in saying that it was assigned to Health and Human Services. Like the senator from the 9th, we do have a process. I'm not objecting to what you're aiming at in your language, but obviously with the insurance, pertaining to insurance, would have liked to have seen it come through our committee and vetted it well. But I'm not objecting to what you have here.
In response, Mr. Chairman, it was actually filed last year as well, and it was assigned to your committee, and I never got a hearing on it then either.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, do you yield?
Yes.
Senator, I think I'm going to support your amendment, but I want to ask you one question. Will the senator yield?
Yes.
Senator, if we find out in this process that this amendment goes against this body and this body's intention and actually raises the cost of health insurance for hardworking Georgians, will you join me then in opposing it?
Let me be clear here. This is not going to raise the cost of health care for anybody. Policies of insurance are contracts, right? And so the parties need to know what they're entering into so that somebody can't come in after the fact and try to say you can't get coverage and play a fast and loose with the people of this state. And so absolutely, this will not raise rates. And so absolutely, I'm with you.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from, excuse me, from the 3rd. Choked me up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does Senator yield?
Yes.
I just want to make sure, and you may have answered this, but I just want to make sure. What you're saying is that if someone knows that they have symptoms, which would be indicative of a condition, and they don't disclose that when they apply for their insurance policy, then that condition would not be covered. It would be considered a pre-existing condition.
Exactly.
Correct?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But there at least needs to be that, right? I mean,
There at least has to be.
Right.
Yeah, that was my question.
That's it.
All right.
You have no more questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 16th to speak to the bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the amendment from the senator from the 6th, but as I was walking up, that amendment was handed to me to look at from that standpoint. I do feel like that in concept I agree, and I would agree with the senator in the 6th that I would be willing to work with her to get this on board in the House and work through that process, but I would not really be in favor of doing it because I don't think it's had the proper time for vetting, and I think the vetting process it needs to be in place and look at what's going on and how it affects the whole part of the bill, since it's a departmental bill as well. Okay.
You have no more questions. All right, we're going to take up the amendment. The question is on the adoption of the amendment. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Objection. All those in favor of the amendment from the senator from the 6th will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that if you don't vote for this amendment, that there's going to be a record that you are voting against consumers in terms of the exclusion for pre-existing conditions?
That is certainly a matter for each and every senator to make for themselves. On the adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 38, the nays are 14, and the amendment is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak to the bill for or against? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass as amended? The question is on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption of Senate Bill 154.
Senate Bill 154 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Code Section 45-1665 of the OCGA relating to the powers and duties of the Georgia Coroners Training Council so as to provide for hearing complaints from outside parties regarding coroners and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 51st to speak to Senate Bill 154.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hopefully we won't have an amendment to this bill. This is a simple bill for the Coroners Training Council. It just adds lines 23 and 24 to the code section, adding additional powers to their council for recommendations for training and removal for coroners in Georgia. If there's no questions, I'll ask for your vote, and I'll yield the well.
You have no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 1 p.m. on Monday, March 4th.
Secretary will read the announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment 450 the Capitol. Agriculture and Consumer Affairs will meet upon adjournment of rules in 310 of the COB. Regulated Industries and Utilities will meet at 12 p.m. in 307 of the COB. Urban Affairs will meet at 1 p.m. in MES 1. Transportation will meet at 1:30 in 450 of the Capitol. Reapportionment and redistricting will meet at 3 p.m. in 307 of the COB. And Science and Technology has been canceled. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Any senators have any announcements? The chair recognizes the senator from the 46th.
Mr. President, point of order. We were told previously that the Regulated Industries was meeting in room 450 immediately following rules, and I think I just heard they said 307 CLOB, and it's not on the list up there.
Mr. Chairman, which room do you believe the meeting's in?
Usually in 450 in the cap, right after rules. That's when it's scheduled, and that's on our notice.
I'm being told it's been changed.
All right.
Where's it? Oh, it's in the process of updating.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President.
That's right. Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st.
Mr. President, I just want to also make an announcement that we will have a special transportation committee on Monday at 10 o'clock. Monday at 10 o'clock.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th.
I'd also like to let you know we're going to have a special Education Youth Committee Monday at 8 a.m.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th.
Mr. President, I don't see the Ag Committee chair, but Ag Committee does meet in 310 upon adjournment of rules. 310 CLOB upon adjournment of rules.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd.
Mr. President, I just wanted to announce we have a special meeting of the Judiciary Committee Monday at 10 in room 307.
The majority leader has moved. The Senate stand adjourned until 1 p.m. on Monday, March 4th, 2019. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it, and the Senate stands adjourned. Have a great weekend.